Hello everyone, welcome on a new episode of Robert Spotlight and Robert Spotlight Kusameh Iwa. Kusameh, welcome on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Thank you to accept the invitation. And would you be able to present yourself for people that don't know you?
Okay. My name is Kusameh Omala. I have been making generative artwork since December of last year, which I sell on FX Hash, and I am becoming slowly reasonably successful at doing that.
Perfect. Okay. Why do you say that you are? How do you say? What word did you use? Successful doing that?
Becoming reasonably successful is what I said. Yes. Well, I think that it's taken a while for me to be able to produce a quality of work which I feel happy with, and I think it's taken a while as well to learn about the platform and understand what work is likely to sell, what prices are right for me. And recently I feel and also because I only started doing this in December. So for the first few months, I was just trying out lots of different things, having loads of different ideas and figuring out how to create those in code and make artworks from them. And then in the last few months, I feel that I have begun to understand what I want to do as an artist and where I'm going as an artist. And so I'm developing work, creating a library of techniques and textures, so that I'm building on previous work. And so people are getting a feel for who I am, which makes me more collectible and makes me more able to have a following. So gradually, hopefully, we're getting to a position where I can quite confidently make work that I know I'm going to sell. There were times in the past where I would spend weeks creating something, as I'm sure most new generative artists have the experience of working extremely hard, putting hours and hours and days and weeks into a piece, and then putting out for sale, and nobody buys it, which can be really disheartening. But I'm hoping that that's not going to happen to me too much anymore, because I understand the market and I understand myself and myself as an artist better.
Okay, perfect. We are going to get back to that on what did you understand about the market and basically everything that you say. I want to get back a little bit about. I want to talk a little bit about your background. Where have you been an artist since when? When basically, just to talk a little bit about your background, just to have kind of reference point.
How far back would you like me to go?
Where you are comfortable to go, basically.
Well, so my first experience of generative art was when I was 9 years old. Now I'm 56 now, so this was in 1975, when most people didn't have home computers. But my father worked for a company called ACT, which later became Apricot. So he was right at the forefront of developing PCs in this country. And we had a home PC. I think it probably had about 2 kilobytes of memory, but we had it. And I, at 9 years old, I learned basic programming. And I remember creating, when you create a line, I mean, it's still done today, where you create a line to a point and then lots of lines. I can't think what it's called.
Okay.
And I wrote programs that did that. So that was when I was a child. And then I lived. I trained as a teacher, a maths teacher, when I was in my 20s, and worked as a teacher for many years. But I've always wanted to bring together maths and art. They're my two loves, mathematics and art. And in 2011, I decided to leave teaching to become a font designer. So that's what I did, because there I could use maths to create letter forms and shapes. And what I found myself doing was actually writing open type code and making complicated fonts, because I enjoy the coding as well. And then, so I did that for a while. And then in December, I met up with a friend who is a little bit well known on FX Hash. And he told me about what he was doing and showed me his work. And I thought, wow. And he's making a lot more money than I probably ever will. But what I thought was, well, I can do that, you know. And I asked him what I needed to learn to be able to do that, and he suggested I learn P5 JavaScript. So I went away and started learning.
And did you know any other language of programmation before?
So I learned BASIC as a child. I learned Logo at university. I learned HTML. So I'd done some website building just to, you know, make a bit of money on it. And then I'd done the coding with my fonts. But I'd never done any JavaScript. I didn't like I didn't think I would find JavaScript easy to learn. It seemed like a strange language. But actually, once I started learning it, I realized it's very, very similar to BASIC that I'd learned as a child. And I think I've picked it up fairly quickly. Yeah.
Okay. And so did that bring you some child memories?
Very much so, yeah.
Very much?
Well, yes, mostly just a feeling of frustration that I was kind of born too early to be a young person in this market, which would be really exciting. And yeah, I wish that I'd carried on with what I was doing then, because I've always, you know, for me, it doesn't feel like work. You know, I'm somebody who I'm on the autistic spectrum. I really like technology that distracts me. So I would spend a lot of time playing computer games, for example. But once I started doing the coding, the art coding, I was finding that I would rather do that than anything else. So I get up in the morning really happy, really excited, looking forward to the work. And it doesn't feel like work. It feels like indulgent escapism, just, you know, joyful for me. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So basically, you meet your friend. Your friend gives you basically the setup to start. Basically, you have to learn this language, maybe be present on this platform, etc. What are the other advice that your friend gave you, except learn this language?
Well, we sat together and looked at the FX Hash website, and looked at the work that was being produced, and he showed me what he considered to be the better examples of that work and the worst examples of that work. I mean, there's some really terrible work on FX Hash, as well as some really wonderful work, which is one of the joys of that platform. He told me to, right from the beginning, learn to make work which adapted to window sizes, which at the time I didn't really understand the importance of that. But so he told me, to make work that would adapt to window sizes. He told me to do all of my randomization at the start of the stuff that I didn't really understand about randomization, and how to work that into the programs. He told me, we had quite an interesting conversation. He said, the way to do it is to look at the work that you like, look at who's buying that work, and look at the other work that they're collecting, and then try to create work that is similar to that.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was his advice. But I then said to him, I said, well, is that what you do? And he said, oh, no, I don't do that. Because what he does is he creates original work from his heart that he wants to create, you know. So I said, well, I don't think I'm going to do that either. And I haven't done that. And I think that's the market is moving and changing so fast. It's so vibrant that trends come in. So somebody will create something beautiful, and then you will see over the next few weeks lots and lots more pieces using those same techniques, using that same aesthetic. And then people don't want it anymore. People are bored of that and they want something new. So what I have tried to done is to create things that are different from what is actually being sold, which isn't necessarily the easiest way to get to become popular, but it's what I've done. And with the textile pieces that I've been doing, I don't know if you've seen my work at all, but with the textile pieces I've been doing, they really are nobody else is doing that in the same way, to the same kind of level.
What is sorry to cut you off, what is unique on your aesthetic?
Okay, so I created a kind of photorealistic fabric for one of my pieces. The first piece, it was actually just as a background for something that I was doing, but I really enjoyed doing it. And lots of people said, wow, we love that fabric, we love that texture. So I then created more textures and more textiles, and I did patterned textiles and woven textiles, and put those together to make a piece which I called Patched, because it was like a patchwork embroidery piece of work, and it was very successful. It was the first piece that it sold out, and then it did well on the secondary market, and I had a couple of high sales, well, for me, high sales of like 35 tears, which at the time was about £100. So it was really successful. But then I went off that and did all sorts of other things because I was still new and still full of ideas for what I wanted to do. But none of my other pieces were as successful as that one. So then a few months ago, I returned to that textile work, and I've been developing that. And I think I'm reasonable in saying that on FX Hash, at least, I don't know about other platforms, there's nobody else who is doing realistic textures in the same way that I'm doing at the moment.
Okay. So are you talking about Wipe? The collection Wipe?
Wipe? No.
No, it's not. It's not this one.
That's not mine.
I believe so. Okay, let me if I can do that.
Yeah.
It's not it's not your it's not your page on FX Hatch.
That's my page. Yes. So all of those on the top row there, those are all textile pieces that I've done recently. Yes.
Okay. Okay. I thought that you were talking about Wipe.
I don't know what you mean by wipe.
No, it's it's what I was talking about. It's my accent, maybe. It's I'm talking about that.
Oh, this one.
Yes.
Okay. No, that one didn't do very well, really. I ended up giving that one away.
So sorry. So basically, I didn't understand well what you were saying, because basically what I have understood was you were doing overlaying with text.
Yes. Oh no, I'm talking about textiles. So fabrics.
Okay.
I think we're misunderstanding each other here.
Yes. No. It's on my side. So you basically everything that you are referring to, it's on the first row.
The ones that I'm talking, yes, the ones that I'm talking about now, the aesthetic that I'm developing now, that is the top row.
Okay.
You can see there, yes.
Okay. Perfect.
And then, so yeah, I mean, if you obviously, if you look down, then you'll see there's loads of different sorts of things that are completely different from one another. There's some that are animations, some that are using shaders, some that are very much about user interaction. So there's all these different sorts of pieces, and they all look very different. They don't look like they necessarily come from the same artist. Now it feels like, and I said to people at the time, it was like I was doing a foundation year. I don't know if you know that concept. So when artists, before artists go to study their chosen field, they do a foundation year where they experience all sorts of different kinds of art and mark making. So I think my first 6 months of work was really like a foundation. I was just watching videos, trying out techniques, creating artwork from them. But now I'm developing from one piece to the next. I'm developing in a particular direction that I'm excited about and I'm enjoying. So my last piece was Zen Strokes, which was a canvas piece, which then had a swirl of paint on it, which was very hard for me to be so minimalist, because usually I just keep throwing more and more things at something, thinking that I need to give people a lot for their money, but with this one, I just loved it so much when it was so simple. And I share all of my work. I share on the FX Hash Discord channel. There's a feedback and critique channel, and everything that I do, I share there. And I wish more people would use it, because it's so helpful. Because there's several people there who are experienced artists, and they will give suggestions. They're not all, I don't take up every suggestion, but very often I've had really helpful suggestions. Anyway, so a lot of people on there said this is fine as it is, so I published that as it is. And my piece that I'm working on now is a development from that, where I'm doing a lot more paint on canvas. So it looks like reasonably realistic paint on canvas. And yeah, it's a lovely way of working, and I'm hoping that people who like my work already will like this next piece, because it's of the same sort of aesthetic. Yes.
Okay, makes sense. When you share your work on the FX Hash Discord, did you share it before you put it on chain?
Oh yes, always. I mean, once I have something that looks a bit like what the final piece will be, then I will share some pieces. I think that one of the things that I've noticed, especially with new artists, is that when I spend a lot of time working on something and looking at it for hours and hours every day, then I love it. I come to love it because I created it, and it's an extension of me to an extent. And I can't look at it objectively. So if I put it on the feedback channel on Discord, then people will be honest with me, and they'll tell me, we don't like this, or this doesn't look right, this is wrong, this makes me feel uncomfortable. And it's very hard to hear that, because that's not what I want. I want to put it on there and everybody to say, oh wow, this is the most beautiful thing we've ever seen. But when I do hear it and I listen to that and I take on that criticism, then I can improve the work. And it brings me down to earth and makes me more realistic. Makes me more realistic about what I can charge for pieces as well. Because I feel as if, and I've seen this happen with a lot of people, is they will put up their first work or the early work and want to charge a lot of money for it because they know how much they put into it. But unfortunately, that isn't what that piece is worth. Mm-hmm. So I have to be realistic and ask other people what they think it's actually worth on the market. And then I have the experience of selling rather than the experience of pricing something too high and not selling it.
Okay. So basically, you ask, what do you think about this aesthetic, and also, what do you think will be the good price range?
Yeah,
Okay. And
I don't always ask that these days, but I certainly did in the beginning. I asked about price. Yeah.
okay, okay, get it. Regarding the aesthetic, when you are building your algorithm will generate an amount of iteration. How do you pick the selection that you want to showcase to people for feedback collection?
I would pick ones that are. I think what I actually do is I pick the ones that I think are the better ones, but also try to show people the range. And that's another question often is, you know, asking people if some pieces are too different from the others. You know, is the variation okay? Do these all look like they belong to the same collection? Or, you know, and generally the more variation, the better. But also, if sometimes, you know, certain parameters in the algorithm won't produce something so beautiful. And my personal choice with that is to make those very rare, so that if somebody gets one of those, then it's rare. Or just, yeah, sometimes you just have to say, no, I'm not going to allow that to be part of the collection, because it's not fair. There's nothing worse than, I do mint things as well myself. I do collect myself, although not very much. There's nothing worse than feeling disappointed when you mint a token and what you get isn't what you were expecting, because it's very different from the other pieces.
Okay, makes
If that
sense.
answers the question,
Yeah, yes,
yeah. Okay.
it makes a lot of sense. And basically, it's a question that I have. It's, are you a generative artist? Are you dealing with variation, with a kind of a general quality, because variation can lead to having, as you said, something like a grail piece, and something that can be seen as not that good, So how do you balance the variation, general quality about variation?
I think that is possibly the right at the essence of what good generative art is all about. And it's very difficult, is the answer. My early pieces were quite controlled. I knew what I wanted the piece to look like, and I made a piece that looked like that, and then I added a bit of variation, but the variation was really just in the scale and the color, and little else. And a lot of my journey and my development as an artist has been about creating pieces which have a natural variation built into them, and that continues. I'm quite controlling. If you look at my work, it's not like, as you know, a lot of people's work is very random, and I tend to control a bit too much. It's something that I have difficulty with, letting go of the work and allowing it to so that's something that I am developing. So if you look at, for example, my piece Patched with Tartan, it's very much like you get a design and the piece is designed, and it will, yes, you may get a bigger or a smaller flower, you might get a circle here or a square there, but generally none of the pieces are going to be surprising. And then a piece like Borrow, which is much more random, with just pieces patching everywhere, which was more popular and is more exciting, I think, for people buying the work. And yeah, so I think what I try to do is make the most common pieces will be the ones that I know are good. And then the outlying variations that may or may not work so well, I make those rare, as I said before, to make them, to compensate the buyer. If they don't actually like them, at least they've got a piece that's rare. And also, you know, I've been really surprised at what other people like. As an artist, I create work that I like. That is my my standard, is what I personally find beautiful. But I'm also aware that other people will find different things beautiful. But I don't try to create things for other people, because that doesn't satisfy me as an artist. I think that's a really sad thing that happens to artists if they're trying to make what other people like rather than what they like themselves. So I continue to make what I love, and that's the joy of, you know, NFTs, is that we have a big enough audience now for our art that if I love it, then I'm going to find enough people who also love it and who are going to come on the journey with me. Whereas in the past, when art was only sold to people who were like physically nearby to us, then it was much more difficult to find people who have the same vision, the same pleasures, the same, do you see what I mean? The same appreciation.
Yes.
Mm.
Okay. Okay. Previously, you talk about your friends that give you some guideline, and you said that he gave you good example and bad example on FX hash without pointing your finger in anyone. How would you describe something that is a bad work and something that is a good work?
Okay. So the most obvious things with what is not a good work is a work that changes proportions completely when you open it on a wide screen. So you have so it doesn't resize properly. You have pieces that change. Where the preview image doesn't match the output, things like that. Bad work. Well, I think that if I can look at a piece and I know exactly how it was done immediately, then that isn't necessarily interesting. And people new to creating things often will create work that is very simple geometric shapes and colors. And personally, I am a great lover of color and color palettes, and it's my favorite part of making a piece is creating the color palettes for it. And I think some of the color palettes, and it is a matter of taste, but I find some of the color palettes really unpleasant and jarring. I am an artist who I like things to be beautiful. I like things to be harmonious, and I know that that isn't what art is necessarily about for everybody, but it is for me, and that's my personal opinion. Yes. Okay. Also, there's a lot of people will create very loud animations, that are very, flashing and fast moving and really hard to look at. Personally, I'm not a fan of those either. But that's my personal take, and luckily everybody's different.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to follow up on what you just said. When you watch something and you can explain how it has been done, that means that it's not good because it's too simple, right?
I mean, that's I'm sure there are lots of exceptions to that, but in general, yes. Yeah.
Okay. And so let's talk about the exception. Have you any memories about thinking that something was done one way, and talking with the actual artist that done the piece, you find out that he took something very, very, what is a word? A creative way, basically a side way to achieve it, and you were surprised.
I can't immediately think of an example of that. I have had the experience of, do you know the difference between image composition and generative work?
No.
So image composition is when people just created images and then they just layer them, so that layered PNGs.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and at the moment, about half of the work on FX Hash is image composition, and about half of it is generative. And it used to be so that you didn't know which was which, and that was quite a problem, because you'd see something that is an image composition piece, so somebody's created it in Illustrator or Photoshop, and then they've just layered it with the programming, rather than everything being generated by code. And I've seen pieces which I thought were coded and was very impressed by, and then find out that they were image composition pieces. So they now label all pieces whether they're image composition or generated, because people were creating these image composition pieces and people were buying them and being disappointed. Personally, I think FX Hash should have separate channels, because then you know when you're looking at a piece, you know whether it's been made by code or whether it's been layered. Yeah, I mean, looking through the marketplace on FX Hash, it can be quite baffling as to why some pieces are so popular and some pieces aren't. I see extremely beautiful work that doesn't sell, and I see work that, to me, isn't interesting, that sells very well. And a lot of people will try to say why this is, but actually nobody really knows. There's all sorts of different factors that go into whether a piece is successful or not.
Okay. And basically, how can someone check if what is looking, it's a gen art or image or composition?
Well, on FX Hash now, everything that's image composition has to be labeled. So when you look at the description, it says that it's image composition. That's because of problems in the past. Yeah.
Okay. And there is nothing, if we don't talk about the marketplace, you cannot point out on the source code?
On the what?
On the algorithm.
I don't know what you mean.
But so, the gen art, you have to make a piece of code, and the piece of code, when a collector is going to mint, the mint is going to be an input to the code to generate a piece. So that it's a gen art. Image composition, it's like a lot of layer of different things. So what I'm asking to you, it's, without talking about the marketplace, there is on the collector side, there is no way to find out if there is some code or if there is no code.
Well, I mean, I'm not an expert, but I mean, there is code. There's the code that creates the layers, that chooses which layers to use. Yeah, I think if you looked at the code, then you would be able to see that the code was loading a lot of PNGs and then layering those. So you would be able to see that if you knew what you were you were looking for. But I mean, the work is still generated in that it's the code that chooses how to place the layers. And most pieces are bundled. My work is actually open. The code is open, so you can, if you look at any of my work in live view, you can read all of the code. It's just there and easily to read. But most work is bundled, so that it's very difficult to read. I don't really understand that side of things. Mine's just very open.
Okay. And do you put your code on chain as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure how all that works, but no, I don't think the code is on the chain, is it? I'm sorry, you need to talk to somebody who understands these things better. I don't know how that works.
No problem. It's
because I know that my code tends to be really long. Because it tends to be quite a lot of it. Although it's still a lot smaller than the image comp pieces because they've got all the massive file sizes for the images. No, I think all the code is stored somewhere else very safely.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay, perfect. Get it. So basically, I just asked you the question because my understanding it's Gen art. It's very special because it's the form of art that have a great fit with blockchain technology. Because as everything is on chain, you are kind of protected by the blockchain itself. That means that it's committed on it, and whatever happened to an edition, you can how to say it, to re-render a specific edition, later on.
I wouldn't like to say any more because my knowledge is I can guess, but I don't have the actual knowledge to tell you how that works. I don't know.
Okay, no problem.
The FX hash, I know that there's an actual hash, which is a 49-digit code, which when put into my code generates a specific artwork, and it always generates that artwork, and that hash is stored on the blockchain, but I'm not sure about the actual code itself.
Okay, perfect. Let's talk a little bit about what you understood about the market. So it was at the very beginning of the interview. You said, okay, I just have a real-time question. So I will first ask you the question: what did you understand about the market?
Nothing at all. Not a thing. I didn't know what an NFT was. My brother had tried to explain what a blockchain was, but I didn't understand it. I just looked at FX hash, and I just looked through. And my first work, I think I put up for sale for 3 TES, and it sold about 14. And at the time, I was really disappointed because in my head, I'd got, okay, I'm putting up, I don't know, 256 editions for 3 TES. That means I'm going to get whatever 700 and something TES back, and that will be enough for me to buy a new laptop. That was my plan. And of course, I put it up, and I sold 14 or 15, and I was very disappointed. But actually, that was quite good, and I can say now for a first work to sell that many at 3 TES was good. But I've learned slowly over time how it works.
Okay, perfect. So I have a question. So it's just JPEG. Hello, because I know just JPEG. So the question is, what's the best coding bootcamp? So I don't know if you have.
I have no idea.
No idea. So me neither. So
I learned coding from. I use the P5JS online editor and the P5JS reference library, and I watched lots of YouTube videos, and that's how I learned to code.
Okay, but in your case, you already had a background, right? Because you already know basics So it's kind of, you didn't start from scratch, because here.
Yeah, I didn't start completely from scratch, but because I had a feel for how code works, but I didn't know a line of JavaScript when I first started. And it is different, although it's very similar. The principles are the same. It is different. I'm also lucky enough that my son's father, my ex-partner, is quite good at JavaScript, and although we hardly ever talk, we actually I was able to call him and get help from him as well when things were really difficult. And there's also Discord channels. There's a P5JS Discord channel for FX Hash. There's a creator support channel, and there's some really wonderful people on there as well who will, if you send them your code, they'll look at it, they'll debug it, they'll tell you what you're doing wrong, they'll help you, you know, and I did that quite a lot as well. I still do that quite a lot as well. So yeah, the help is there. The Discord channel for FX Hash is absolutely wonderful. Okay. If you use it for the different ways that it's useful.
Okay, perfect. So it just a reply. I have heard of P5 as well. Thanks. So it seems that you give a good reply to him. My next question is about your eyes of what it's happening on the market. What do you think it's missing, or I don't know if you, I believe you collect a few pieces, but as a collector, what would you want to see more on the gen art market? If that makes sense.
It does make sense, but it's not something I've thought about. I don't know, because what I'd like to see more of, I guess, is people's individual voices. People, I think, for me, this is very new, and for everybody, it's quite new. And what I'm finding exciting is that it's like there's a process where people start making art, and they either enjoy it or they don't. They either are successful or they aren't, and then people fall away, and then people stay and get better and better and better. And I'm seeing that particularly with some of my friends in the feedback channel. The work that people are producing is just one piece is better than the next, better than the next, better than the next. And I think that is really exciting, and people are also becoming more individual. There's some beautiful photorealistic landscape work that is happening now. And I'm not an art historian, but I think it's like you can almost see that same progression that you can see reflected in the art world of the different channels and the different kinds of work. The work I'm currently doing is paint on canvas, and I'm inspired by the work of a painter called Sean Scully, and I am recreating actually very similar to his actual work, which I think it's going to be very beautiful. I think the variation is going to be wonderful. I'm really enjoying the coding, because there's, what's it called when you sort of have like a tree where, you know, where it's like you say you either go this way or this way, and then at that point you either go that way or that way. And this one, yeah,
it's not a fractal.
Yeah, like a fractal decision tree, where for the variations that you were talking about earlier, there will be so many variations. Having, you know, so once the code has gone through this process, yeah, I'm really excited. And that's something that I want to see, is more pieces where when you mint something, you don't know what you're going to get. You can look at all the other pieces but you don't know what you're going to get. It's going to be a surprise because they're all different in some way. Now, some of my work is absolutely not like that. My last piece, Then Strokes, you pretty much knew you were going to get a canvas with a circle on it, and people were happy. That's one way of doing it. And people were happy with that. They knew what they were going to get. They were going to get one of those. But then look at some other pieces, and I can't think of any names. But there have been some incredible pieces where the variation is amazing, and they're all beautiful, but they're all very different. Usually those are ones that I can't afford to buy. But those are, nailing that balance between variation and aesthetic is like the holy grail of generative art for me, which is what I'm trying to do all the time.
Okay, perfect. Yes. Okay, it's very clear, and basically we already talked about that, the difficulty to being a good gen art. It's being able to handle the variation and the quality, on the aesthetic. So it's a repetition of what you already explained on the podcast. Let's talk a little bit about your collectors. So do you know them? Do you interact with them a little bit on Twitter? Do you know why your collector chose one piece and not another?
Well, I don't know that I necessarily have very many collectors. I have a few, and some of those are people who I know, who I talk to on Discord, as well as on Twitter. I always do try to reply to people who show examples of my work that they have bought, and that is something that I think is I'm just on the edge of. I'm just beginning to get into that. Like my last piece, I had about 4 or 5 reserves because people had asked for one to be reserved, and some of those were people that I didn't know prior to that. So that's really nice. And I didn't have a Twitter account at all before I started doing this work, so I've built that up from nothing. And I'm not very good at being dedicated to spending time on Twitter every day. It's one of those things that I feel I should do more. But I think people like my fabrics for sure. This piece that I'm doing at the moment was supposed to be a fabric piece. It was supposed to be a canvas with paint on it. But because I've been inspired by this guy, Sean Scully, he covers the canvas completely with paint. So the only bit of canvas, the only bit of textile is just around the edges. So I'm hoping it will still be attractive to people who like the textile work. But my next piece will, well, I don't know. Probably, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm thinking of doing kind of African mud printing, which is, it's exciting, but it might be too difficult for me. But that would be more fabrics, but with some really vibrant, beautiful patterns on them. Yeah. And I think people will like it, hopefully.
Okay. What so far? What is your biggest mistake?
Ooh. I think my biggest mistake was when pieces didn't sell, I reduced the price to 0 to sell them so that people would just take them. And I wouldn't do that again. I would rather just burn the editions that haven't sold, or just leave them there. I think I was embarrassed. It's quite, one makes oneself quite vulnerable putting up a piece of art for sale, and it feels like you're very exposed. And if I put something up that I've put my heart and soul into for a month, and then it doesn't sell, there's a kind of feeling of a shame. And so I've wanted to just reduce the price to 0 so that it will go. And I'm sorry, my cat is
No problem.
hopefully he'll shut up soon. But as somebody actually wrote to me and said that this devalues the work for people who bought it, and I appreciate that if somebody has bought it and spent money on it, and I then say, okay, well, I'm giving the rest of these away, that isn't a good thing, and I wouldn't do that again.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. So I'm going to showcase some live comment. So Crystal, hi, Air to support, and Georgie Peg again. You are a beast. So it seems that what you are sharing, it's very appealing to him. So I have a few questions because we are close to the end of the podcast. I will ask you, if you have a time machine, would you change anything? And if yes, what would you change?
I have thought that I would like to have, I don't know, if I could start over with my FX Hash profile at this point, I would love to be able to do that, because I think I could charge more for the work that I'm doing now than I am doing. It's like, because like all of the bots and people look at, okay, this person, their last work sold for so much, so therefore this is how much their work is worth. And I think the work I'm doing now is worth more, but I can't charge more because the history and, you know, the marketplace on my other pieces is such that it's not worth more. You know, I see people coming in, new people who've got a background in coding, you know, artistic talented people, and they create work and they sell it for higher prices than I do. And I think some of that work, not all of it, a lot of it is a lot better than stuff that I'm doing, but some of that work is not. But they're getting more for it, and that can be a little bit frustrating. However, this is my journey, and it's fine actually, and it's going in the right direction. So I am happy.
Perfect. And did you wanted to address one particular subject, and I didn't offer you the opportunity?
No, I think everything that was on my mind has come up.
Perfect. So I have only two last things to see with you. So the first one, it's called in French pass décisif. So it's a decisive pass in English, and basically it's when I'm asking to my guest, which other guests would you want to see on the podcast, and which question would you want me to ask them?
That's put me on the spot a bit.
If you are not comfortable, it's okay. It's
I have a friend called Anne Bello, who I think his Twitter account is @waterflowing, and he's creating some glorious photorealistic work, and I would just love to hear about his inspirations for his work.
okay.
And his journey with I think he uses 3JS, which is also JavaScript, but it's aimed more for three-dimensional work. So I'd love to hear more about his process.
Perfect. And last question for me, it's Kusameh, what is an NFT for you?
What is an NFT for me? It's a really exciting way of making an explosion in art that is affecting the whole world, or it feels like it from my perspective. It's freedom for artists to be themselves and still be successful.
Perfect. So thank you very much for your time, for everything that you share. Thanks to Crystal and Jazipek to have been watching in real time. Thank you very much, Kusameh, and let's keep talking on social.
Thank you very much, Robert. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.